Okay. Um, so I may have gone a bit insane lore diving. And so we're doing one last, knock on wood, Lies of Peace stream, where I just ramble on about some loose ends and talk about the alchemic symbols that I finally got around to looking into. I also wanted to take a look at the Black Sea side because goddamn is that skybox gorgeous in the post game, and I think a lot of people might not actually return to this area. So I just wanted to kind of showcase this a little bit that I discovered while I was seeing if it was possible to replay the memories. And we're gonna go here as well. Take a look at the Isle of the Alchemist from a distance. And then for my little Vati video session, I'm going to go up to the little courtyard just before the boss fight with Simon. So I'm not going to pretend I have all the answers, but I spent a couple hours looking at alchemical symbols and literally looking through like public domain PDFs, breaking down the language of alchemical symbols and even looking at like a German reference for them and stuff like that. So it's a whole thing. Okay, this was not necessarily worth revisiting. I thought that would be more impressive. Game is still loading assets, and that's why it's all stuttery, I think. Okay. Should be here. Cradle of the Gods. I forget if there's a place that we could actually sit down. I'm assuming that is supposed to be a portrait of Sophia before her hair turned blue. Because if I remember right, she was a brunette in the painting that we saw. Can I do a fun little gesture here? Do we have a rest gesture? Yeah, we gotta sit. Was that good? Probably. Alright. It's good enough anyway. So... this. Let me just take the filter off here for a moment, because this is going to be our main focus, briefly. So I'm not 100% sure if the orientation matters. This might actually be upside down. The impression I get is that it doesn't matter. So the symbol in the middle there, and is the most important symbol, is the alchemical symbol for blue vitriol, and that can either be the plus symbol can be either on the left or the right. If it's on the right, then the circle with the T shape in it would have to be flipped 180 degrees. And that's essentially what the alchemical alphabet is. It's kind of like Hangul, the Korean alphabet, where each piece of a letter represents like a different sound. And I've figured out 3 of these symbols. Well, I mean, in addition to blue vitriol, technically I figured out 4. So we're going to go over that first. So the symbol that's repeated 4 times in the center there, that is a Celtic knot. And that is much like the symbol of Ouroboros, again, the snake eating its tail there, is a symbol of like eternity and like never ending and everlasting life and stuff like that. The sun, which can also be like a circle with a dot in the middle in some. That's the other thing, is that alchemical symbols have also drastically changed from, era to era, depending on the century that you're referencing. Sometimes it's referenced as the sun itself. Sometimes it's a circle with a dot in the middle, which is probably why I wasn't really able to find the other 4 symbols on here. The symbol at the top right there, the circle with a line through it, specifically the one that crosses beyond the bounds of the circle, refers to spiritus, or the soul, basically. And the square with the dot in it at the bottom, strange as this is, that might actually be a reference to the alchemical symbol for urine. So that's a whole thing as well. The symbol up top, let me actually revert that. The symbol up top is very similar, but not exactly the symbol for the Philosopher's Stone. And there was, in fact, a whole bunch of thoughts that urine could be used to create the Philosopher's Stone, or at the very least, be used as a catalyst to turn things into gold. So there is, and the sun can also refer to gold. The sun symbol refers to gold. So there is, it's possible that the other 3 symbols here refer to, like, this could basically just be a formula for making the Philosopher's Stone. But I wasn't really able to find out what the other 3 symbols, the bottom one, bottom left, and top left, might refer to. Some symbols in alchemy refer to the process by which you should be mixing or transmuting. There were some things that suggested that top symbol referred to transmutation. But that seemed to relate to a whole bunch of Full Metal Alchemist stuff, so I'm not sure how based in quote-unquote fact, because alchemy isn't like real science, that necessarily might be. So let's keep going over all the alchemical stuff first. I have some tabs open. I spent a bunch of time looking through symbols.com and Wikipedia's page on alchemical symbols. The symbol for spiritus is also very similar to salt and a reference to the body. However, the line on that circle does not extend outside the bounds of the circle, so I don't think that's correct. The symbol up top could also be a reference to sulfur, the soul, consciousness, or oil, which does relate to blue vitriol in a couple ways. We'll get into that momentarily, because that has even more references to things. But yeah, essentially a triangle with a cross shape, much like the blue vitriol. Specifically, the cross, the plus symbol, is below the one of the lines on the triangle, rather than connect the cross connecting at the vertice, which is a different symbol. I forget what it was, but yeah. depending on where the cross is connected. There's that. So I did find a symbol that is kind of similar to the one on the bottom. That coincidentally is ammonia. However, that is basically a circle with a line through it, dots on either side, and then like a greater than sign underneath it with a dot in the open part of the greater than sign. So there are a lot of differences, but there could be something there. Some of the alternate symbols are very similar to one another. It could also be something like antimony oxide, which is a circle with like a cross and then a line coming off, going off to the left of the bottom of the cross. I found a similar triangle symbol with a dot that refers to clay, and that is a triangle with a line that crosses through it going outside the bounds of the triangle, and then there are two dots on either side of the vertices underneath the line. So that could be some similarity. I did also find a triangle with a basically a diagonal greater than symbol going through it that refers to processing something with a wind furnace. So that could have something to do with the bottom symbol in some regard. Hello, Ida. Welcome in. We're on my fucking conspiracy theory shit, trying to decode alchemical symbols. And the symbol for sulfur is very similar to the one on top, the triangle with the cross below it, but it's got an arrow pointing at the end of the cross. It's worth noting that steel is a triangle with a cross connecting it to a circle. The Philosopher's Stone, like I said, is a triangle with a cross connected at one of the bars. There is a sign for lead that's basically a circle with a line through it, and the line kind of extends out and curves like a crowbar. That could be similar to the bottom symbol. So it is worth noting when I was looking at the symbols. So again, it's hard to tell because of the way that the symbols surround the center. Again, I'm assuming that the square with the dot is referring to urine because it is the top of the square is pointing toward the center. So I assume that's supposed to be the orientation. However, a diamond with no dot in the center refers to soap. So that could be relating to soap in some way. There are also some different like circle icons with little curvy like tilde bits that refer to mercury in various forms, like sublimated or precipitated. So it's possible that that bottom symbol refers to mercury. But yes, spiritus again is like essence, finest, most precious. Can mean a whole bunch of different things. And then we get to the symbols for... I saw one contrary thing that said it might actually refer to red vitriol, which is a compound of copper and sulfuric acid. But then so is blue vitriol. It is copper sulfate. And vitriol is a big deal because Basil Valentine, aka Basilius Valentinus, was a 15th century alchemist, much like Simon Magus. He coined... sorry, I'm going through this. He demonstrated that ammonia could be obtained by the action of alkali on sal ammoniac. which is ammonium chloride, and described the production of hydrochloric acid by acidifying brine of common salt, sodium chloride, and created ethyl chloride and oil of vitriol, sulfuric acid. And the acronym for so vitriol was also an acronym in Latin. Visita interiora terrae rectificando in venis occultum lapidem, which means visit the interior of the earth, and by rectifying what you find there, you will discover the hidden stone. And this is a reference to both the Philosopher's Stone, but it is also a reference to mental alchemy, because a lot of the foundation of alchemy was actually it was more of a metaphor on self-improvement and improving the mind and the spirit to achieve various things. In the case of Lies of P, clearly that is immortality. Blue vitriol is a common name for copper 2 sulfate pentahydrate. Copper, and then in brackets II, which I assume means 2. Interestingly enough, this was used as a fungicide and a source of copper to control bacteria and fungus on plants. So if we established that ergo is some kind of substance that gives off spores, which then leads to the petrification disease, and by processing the gold coin fruit, potentially, which I think is, golden ergo or just highly concentrated toxic ergo, they were able to create a blue vitriol-like substance that, when injected into someone with the petrification disease, is what would then turn them into these monstrous forms that would allow them to bear further ergo. And that concept is very similar to cordyceps, also known as the caterpillar fungus. Again, tying back into the theme of metamorphosing through a cocoon into a butterfly, or failing to do so, because essentially what cordyceps does, so it can infect caterpillars and butterflies alike. It basically takes over their bodies, turns them into mummified hosts, directs them to find an environment that is optimized for the fungus's growth, and it then uses that to fruit and spread its spores, infecting other creatures, which is exactly what the carcasses do. So there is a long chain of one thing influencing the other to lead to the concept of carcasses and how they work. And let's see, is there anything else I need to talk about with respect to blue vitriol? I don't think so, but essentially references to copper, metal, and sulfuric acid. The individual symbols themselves, there's literally an article on Wikipedia called Alchemical Symbols. Oh, it took me to the Unicode page, not what I wanted. Yeah, so again, there's the symbol for sulfur there. It is possible. So zinc is actually a circle with a with like a greater than sign above it. So it could be that is what the symbol on the bottom might be referring to. And again, antimony is basically a vertical circle with a cross on top. But I don't know if that's necessarily related to any of this. But the T symbol refers to acid, and the The circle with a horizontal T refers to vitriol or sulfates, hence why this is basically a formula for a form of sulfuric acid, in this case copper, being dissolved in it. Copper alchemic symbol. Can I find that? Okay, so that could just be like the symbol for Venus, the circle with a cross below it, or an incredibly convoluted alternative symbol. Anyway, moving on from that, we have lore stuff we can talk about. So I found a couple things on... And one last thing to mention is that alchemical hexagrams that break down the formula for the Philosopher's Stone are in fact quite common. So that's another thing that ties into all that. So I found a couple pages on Reddit from someone called Dangerous Cog, who explained a few of these things. Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff that goes into Gnosticism and Hermeticism, particularly how that relates to the last name Monad. There are also concepts, anyone who's... so Xenosaga is heavily influenced by Gnosticism, and there are characters named after, like, Albedo, Rubido, and Negredo, meaning whiteness, redness, and blackness. Blackness referring to death and decay, albedo, purification, rubido represents the final stage and success of creating the Philosopher's Stone. And again, this is kind of referring to the various states of carcasses. This person points out how you experience Champion Victor, who mutates during the fight. He goes all Bane mode. Lexasia, on the other hand, was completed. And then Simon Manus is supposed to be... she was no. So this person concludes Lexasia was never truly completed, hence the black around her eyes, representing that state. And so it's suggested that Simon could be seen as complete, as he was able to metamorphose with the hand of God, especially into what he was. But again, I'm not going to go super far into that, because they then start talking about, like, the various forms of Carlo to Pinocchio and so on. And I've got more important stuff to talk about with respect to that. Monad is the supreme god of Gnosticism, and created Demiurge, a lesser god commonly depicted as evil, the same god from the Old Testament. And there's also a bunch of references to Aeonian, and apparently one of these Aeons in Gnostic beliefs was named Sophia. And there's specifically something called Valentinus Gnostic belief. The youngest Aeon stands at the center of the system. And there's a chain of that, like her, basically having an abortion that leads to a formless substance that eventually becomes the mother of the Demiurge. And Valentinus Gnostics believe that they are the children of Sophia. So that could be referring to, again, her survival at the end and the future of immortals or puppet kind. because presumably they'll, for any puppets that haven't been completely drained of their ergo, they'll take care of them. And I believe the game left off in a state where the petrification disease was still a problem. But yeah. Now on to actual game lore stuff. And again, this is not going to be in any kind of particular order or timeline. This was me just going through one wiki article to another. So as I was going through the images from the intro, there was the alchemists on a boat, and I forgot a detail that the alchemists came from beyond the sea. They came from the east, and they discovered the alchemist specifically discovered ergo in Krat about 30 years before the events of the game. And of course it was Krod's discovery 600 years ago, which was when ergo was first found. We'll get back to that in a second. So the whole thing at the end of the game with why Geppetto is trying to transfer P's heart is that Pinocchio was specific, as mentioned by Geppetto. Pinocchio was not restricted by the Grand Covenant, which is so that he can fight humans. The nameless puppet, however, much like Romeo, is bound to the Grand Covenant. So by taking Pinocchio's heart and putting it into the nameless puppet, Geppetto is basically capable of making Carlo into a obedient son after he's reborn. And he doesn't have to worry about, again, there was the whole thing with Carlo rejecting his graduation gift and giving it to Romeo, and stuff like that. So Geppetto kind of wanted to bring him to heel. And it's also suggested at the very end that the reason why Geppetto shows up in the DLC to kill Romeo, and with which he uses his puppet glove to control the nameless puppet to do that with, is so that he could basically test recreating a person for the sake of rebirth. Romeo was functionally the same person, but he was under the control of the Grand Covenant. And so, kind of looking at the timeline, so while Geppetto used Rule 0 to start the frenzy, as of Pinocchio's awakening, Romeo was using his ability as the king of the puppets to redirect them to attack carcasses rather than humans. Now, I don't think Geppetto directly interfered, but I think he was backstage before the King of Puppets boss fight, specifically as a contingency plan in case Romeo did not obey orders. But the other thing is that Pinocchio was also specifically designed to not be able to understand ergo wavelengths, which is why the puppet voices on your first playthrough are scrambled. And this is something that could have been done a lot better. I think to make this more clear, but because on New Game Plus, you've got the ergo wavelength decoder that's been fully finished, you are able to understand the ergo wavelengths and speak with the bosses. Now, this is a little strange in the context of the New Game Plus as well, because the whole setup of that fight, if you recall, is the King of Puppets does its little show and says some stuff to Pinocchio that he can't understand, reaches a hand, which Pinocchio then swats aside. And so the conclusion here is effectively that Romeo has the dialogue at the start of that is literally like, "Hey, buddy, glad to see you're back. Wow, let's work together to fight all these carcasses." And then Pinocchio can't understand, swats away his hand, and Romeo's like, oh, you don't know what you're doing. You haven't awakened your ego. You are just going to fall for Geppetto's plan. So I need to put you down, and that's why the fight happens. Not that he was specifically ordered to, potentially, but not necessarily. Also, because at a glance Pinocchio appears to be human, this is why the puppets attack him, despite the king's orders. Um, but on the other hand, to humans, the fact that he doesn't have a mask suggests that he either has the disease or is a puppet. And I'm just scrolling through my notes that I wrote on my phone, and it took a while. And also, part of the big plan was that Simon would basically work with Geppetto to make puppets, and Vanini, by extension, unknowingly ended up going into this as well, since Vanini made all the modern conveniences while Geppetto made the puppets. So that basically made society give up other types of technology, becoming dependent on ergo for everything, as a fuel source, as the thing that controls their servants, and that created widespread impossible to what's the term, when you take quarantine. There we go. Impossible to quarantine at that point because puppets were everywhere, spreading spores, and that was then the cue for Paracelsus to start wandering around, deploying medicine that would then turn people into carcasses, further causing the spread of spores and increasing everything that was going wrong. Simon's plan was essentially to infect everyone with the petrification disease so that he could effectively create a hive mind, since he had the ability to communicate psychically with anyone that had ergo. He wanted to control the city by essentially poisoning everyone. And then eventually that turned into his goal for immortality as well. So there's some more detail on Crod as well, in that the current belief is that Crod is what condenses the ergo spores into crystals. So my current thought process is that Crod and the One-Winged Angel are connected, but not the same, in that I think Crod is the star that they refer to, a meteor that crashed 600 years ago, killed all the life forms around it. Again, there were a bunch of dead farmers and cattle, or at least livestock. And at the time, they didn't realize that ergo had much value to it. But what was happening is that anything that dies releases ergo spores, but it's Crod that is able to crystallize it into a resource. It wasn't until the alchemists came by where they actually found a use for it. And again, the spores refer to the metallic breath. The petrification disease refers to the quote-unquote gift of immortality that humanity refused, which in fact is just crystallizing time and memory by essentially petrifying people. And so we then have the situation where King of the Puppets is trying to prevent the humans from being attacked by the carcasses. Once you defeat the King of the Puppets, they are no longer able to defend Krot from the carcass invasion. The carcasses invade. That then causes an overload of ergo spores within Krot. That then feeds Crod like crazy, causes it to grow and start emitting like golden ergo, which I'm concluding as again some kind of overly concentrated to the point where it's harmful substance. And that is why the earth below Krot started shattering. And that is also why I believe that Paracelsus isn't able to touch the gold coin fruits, because if they are highly concentrated, much like how disruption is instant death, by being near the golden ergo crystals, they deal disruption, and that kills Pinocchio. I think golden ergo ultimately becomes harmful even to beings that are otherwise immortal, according to the definition of having a heart of ergo, with the ergo of the eternal item description. Also, the reason why Sophia was all mangled and like rooted to the spot in her chamber, and the reason she was also to extend herself outwards, is that she was the device hooked up to the top of the tower that was calling all the ergo to it. And that is why Arlecchino, also being plugged into the tower there, was able to make use of her ability to access the ergo wavelengths and then connect to phone calls. So I think that crowd effectively was a cocoon for the angel, the one-winged angel, and then after people started falling ill with the petrification disease, they rejected the gift of immortality, tore the angel apart, and so Prod is still there, but people like the immortals have made off with the various body parts of the one-winged angel. So that is what I think the current state of things is. Some other stuff. So I did confirm that you can fight the final boss of the DLC without assistance. I just read something incorrect somewhere. And I just wanted to give like a final bit of applause to... So again, I know that I kept going back to the Order of Crod report. But I also really want to highlight the So Said Pistris books. Okay, so those are under books. And the Order of... was that in notes or documents? Yeah, okay. Yeah, found unknown minerals, didn't know their value at the time. It was deemed a mere stalagmite with ergo components. It absorbs ergo spores. Now, again, it's hard to know in the timeline when the petrification disease started, but I'm assuming that that was the catalyst for tearing apart the one-winged angel. Also, I should probably get rid of this now. And then So Said Pistris. Specifically, what I want to highlight is just a single word choice, which is what rooted this trilogy of books in my brain as such a interesting piece of lore. Which is, its form was the same, its substance was different. I think elsewhere in a different journal, I can't remember which one it was, they used the word texture. I might be thinking of something else, because I've been delving into a whole bunch of like Lovecraftian stuff recently. But yeah, using a word like texture or substance to describe a otherworldly being is so interesting. Um, and again, where it mentions that it pretended to be human, then became one, again, could be referring to hatching from its cocoon, aka crowd. Undying substance, the breath of metal that lives forever. And the blessing was not for everyone. Many died with hope in their hearts, probably hope that they would be cured from the petrification disease. But then the ones who lived harbored rage instead of death. This could either be reference to people turning into carcasses or just being upset with their situation. But yeah, this suggests to me that death started happening potentially as far as 600 years ago, as Crod started to crystallize Ergo. And again, I think the original Ergo was crystallized from the remains of the farmers and livestock that were killed in the meteor crashing down the star. And there are those who survived with the blessing. The immortal ones still walk around and wish for the resurrection of God. So I definitely think that this is going to be a situation where the immortals are going around collecting all the various parts of the angel to eventually bring it back to life. And the whole Krot experiment was like, hey, if we give this to some of the alchemists, what will they do with it? And Pinocchio ended up being Pinocchio and Sophia ended up being the survivors of that. Well, Jade Alice, thank you for the follow there. Hope you're having a good night. But yeah, that ended up being kind of the conclusion of all that. So I think that'll do it for now as far as recapping Lies of P is concerned. So now we can we can finally get back into Stellar Blade. So let me just get that set up and end my recording and change my category.